Good morning, 7 East.
Happy Monday, people. 44th episode of LEPRE Radio. Here we are getting very close to the end. It is Monday, June 8th. We are on the air. Trying to keep it concise today because the assignment today, for better or worse, has a lot of reading to it. So we're just going to do our daily countdown today. The tradition that is very therapeutic for me, counting down the years, or the days left in the year. And then number 2, I'm going to be going over the 1864 to 1865 slideshow, the worst and last years of the Civil War. 1-1. So you can use my narration if you'd like to answer the questions while you do it. I will read it aloud and comment along the way. So today is Monday, June 8th. Shows you what's going on. We got assignments right here, Google Meet at 12:30 to 1 o'clock, where I'll go through it again live and answer your questions. And 15 is the number of the day because there are 15 days of school remaining, possibly less, we still don't know. And I have a feeling we won't know until Thursday or Friday. So at most 15. Yes, that is our daily countdown. And now number 2, 1864 to 1865, the worst and last years of the Civil War. Let me open up that slideshow. And I'll just go through it with you all. You can listen along and watch along if you're so inclined. So 1864 to 1865, the worst and last years of the Civil War. Last time we did anything Civil War related, it was 1863. The Union had won the Battle of Gettysburg. I almost said the Battle of Gettysburg, but it was the Battle of Gettysburg. And that was the turning point in the war. From this point on, the Union is going to be on offense. Now, the picture in the center is actually of the 54th Massachusetts. That was a regiment of African-American soldiers led by Colonel Robert Shaw. This has been produced or reproduced in a movie called Glory, which is probably my favorite Civil War film. I used to watch it. Well, I watched it as a student in 7th grade. It would have been great if we could have done that this year. But I would recommend this with your parents' permission, of course. It's a great movie. It's called Glory. Matthew Broderick, Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington. So now, July 1863, we're picking up right where we left off. And the Confederacy is on the defensive after losing at Gettysburg, but the North has a lot of ground to take over. Take a look at this map. Blue is the Union, red is the Confederacy. Union has barely made a dent in 3 years. A few of the areas are blue now, but at this rate, it would take years. So in 1863, the war is now in its third year. Union has barely made a dent in taking the South back from control of the Confederacy, but the South is at its weakest point after Gettysburg. Lincoln knows the war will go on forever if the U.S. simply keeps trying to fight battle after battle across the entire South. Lincoln knows he has to change strategy, and he finally finds 2 leaders able to help the Union win. One of the things that has plagued the Union so far is that they cannot find leaders who can go toe-to-toe with Southern generals like Lee or Jackson, who had died earlier. So Siege of Vicksburg. Now, while most of the action of the Civil War is happening in the East, fighting is still going on across the country. In the Mississippi River Valley, 2 Union officers stood out for their roles in winning the battle and capturing Vicksburg on July 4th, 1863. It's the day after Gettysburg. Those are Generals Ulysses S. Grant and William T. Sherman. This victory cut the South in 2, separating Texas and Arkansas and Louisiana from the rest of the CSA, giving the Union total control over the Mississippi River. So remember the Anaconda Plan? One of the points was to capture the Mississippi. Well, in the Siege of Vicksburg, the Union finally does it. They accomplish that part of the Anaconda Plan, taking over the Mississippi and splitting the Confederacy in 2. Here we have the Siege of Vicksburg. And that is Ulysses S. Grant on the bottom right with the kind of cowboy-looking hat. So Lincoln's new leaders, unlike previous generals that disappointed President Lincoln by failing at their jobs and leading the Union into loss after loss, like McClellan, Burnside, and others, Grant and Sherman stood out for being totally determined to win at any cost with a record to prove it. This was very different than the generals that Lincoln was using before. A lot of them were kind of scared to go into battle. They were very reserved. They wouldn't take chances. But now Lincoln finds 2 people who are willing to take chances, to do anything it takes to win. So Lincoln gave Grant command of the Union Army and sent him to face off against Robert E. Lee in Northern Virginia. As for Sherman, Lincoln sent him south to break the back of the Confederacy by fighting a total war deep in enemy territory. And here we have Ulysses S. Grant, William T. Sherman. Grant and Sherman make a great duo, so I think they deserve the title of, drumroll please, the Super Civil War Bros. They're like the Mario and Luigi of the Civil War. Good duo. And I guess if Grant and Sherman are Mario and Luigi, this makes Lincoln Toad. So these images might haunt your dreams. I don't know. I think Abraham Lincoln looks good with the mushroom toadstool hat. Would have been a bolder fashion choice than his stovepipe top hat, but in retrospect, a lot of things seem better. So after Vicksburg, Lincoln splits Grant and Sherman up. Grant is sent to Virginia for a final showdown with Robert E. Lee and his depleted army that is weak after Gettysburg. Sherman is sent to the Deep South to basically destroy their ability to continue fighting the war, and Sherman gets associated with fire a lot, and we're going to see why that is. So 1864. Beginning of 1864, Union assembles its huge armies, remember they have a huge population advantage over the South, to steamroll the South in a divide-and-conquer strategy. They will use total war to cut through the South and crush the rebel Confederates one region at a time. So as Gordon Ramsay says, we need to divide and conquer. They're not just going to go slowly through. They're going to cut the South into pieces and take it over bit by bit. So was total war justified? So what is total war? Total war is when one side tries to destroy everything the other side needs to continue fighting. Food, clothing, animals, farmland, factories, etc. Instead of just focusing on winning battles against the enemy army. So in total war, you are not just fighting battles. Anything that you come across that could be useful to the other side, you destroy it. So if you are a Union army and you're marching in the South and you come across a farm that has food that could feed Confederate soldiers, you burn it down. If you come across a big building that could be used as a shelter, you burn it down. If you come across a bunch of animals like cows and other cattle that could be used to feed Confederate soldiers, you kill them. Total war, very extreme, and it should be no surprise that this type of warfare was usually frowned upon because it hurt regular people more than the enemy army. If you were just a farmer who wasn't even involved in the war, they would destroy your farm anyway. So Lincoln, he knew this, and he was not a bad guy. He resisted waging total war, even when General Sherman proved it worked, precisely because it hurt regular people. He didn't want to be damaging the property of civilians and making it much harder to get people on your side after the war was over. But by 1864, Lincoln began to feel that this strategy would end the war in the shortest possible time and actually wind up saving more lives in the end. So Lincoln thought, look, if this method can actually cut the war short by a year or more, it's actually worth it, because we're going to be saving lives in the end, and lives are what matter. So Sherman's forces cut their way through the South, burning buildings along the way, destroying anything the South could use in the war effort. This is total war, remember? And you can look in the picture at the different kinds of things they're doing. Burning houses, farms, workshops, any resources that could help the South continue fighting the war were destroyed along the way. It was just one big wrecking crew going through the South. One of the extremely useful things Sherman's troops did was rip up Southern railroad tracks to prevent the CSA from using them to transport soldiers and supplies. So you can see there's a drawing on the left side and then an actual photograph on the right. When they would come across railroad tracks, they would literally rip them up. Not only would they rip them up, because when they left, the Southerners put them back down, they also twisted them around poles and trees to make sure that they wouldn't be able to place them down after they kept moving. So very extreme, and they put a lot of thought into this. Anything that was useful, they destroyed or made it unusable. Once he reached Atlanta, Georgia, Sherman burned the entire city to the ground with the power of Guy Fieri, then dragged his forces on the famous March to the Sea in Savannah, Georgia. This is LEPRE history, where we make things a little bit more exciting. So Guy Fieri on horseback. Flavortown has taken over Atlanta, Georgia. And yes, we have some raw historical footage. The burning of Atlanta, 1864. General Sherman, with his fire flower from the Super Mario games, burning Atlanta. And yes, even more raw footage. Sherman's army marching from Atlanta to Savannah, taking out everything in its path. So you see these lines here. This is the march from Atlanta to Savannah, and they destroy everything that is useful along the way. Like Pac-Man, they're just gobbling up everything as they go. And here are just some of the photographs or pictures of what it actually looked like. You see on the right, railroad tracks ripped up. And on the right here, it's the city of Atlanta. You see, the city, it looks like a bomb dropped on it. It was entirely burned. The end result of Sherman's total war. So Union forces under Sherman cut a 50 to 60 mile wide path of destruction across the South, going all the way through Georgia to the Atlantic Ocean, breaking the Confederacy into 3 isolated sections. So you see here on the map, everything in that blue path was destroyed. Very crazy when you think about it. They destroyed anything that was useful in that path. And now at this point, you have the Confederacy in 3 separate sections, divide and conquer. So now the election of 1864, because of the Union victory at Gettysburg in 1863 and the successes of Sherman in 1864, Lincoln is reelected by a huge margin in the Electoral College, winning 212 out of 233 electoral votes. Lincoln's win was a sign that the North was confident in winning the war. So McClellan was a general that Lincoln had fired earlier, and he decided to run against his old boss and failed miserably, only winning Delaware, New Jersey, and Kentucky. And McClellan was kind of more on the open to peace talks side. But Lincoln, he's saying no compromises. We're going to finish this, and we're going to make sure the South comes back, no questions asked. So what a difference a year makes. So this is in New Year's Eve, 1863, and then New Year's Eve, 1864. The North has made a lot of progress. They've taken over more of Virginia. They split the CSA into 3 sections. Lincoln has been re-elected, and the South is still on the run at this point. Things, though, aren't moving as quickly as they'd hope, but things are about to change. So Grant was responsible for dividing the South along the Mississippi River, Sherman for dividing the South across Georgia. South, of course, in 3 parts, made it easier to conquer. And the Union in 1864, this is the perfect picture that sums up what the Union is going through. They are growing stronger. And yes, we have Ulysses S. Grant on the left, Lincoln in the middle, and Sherman on the right with their laser eyes. Blue because they're the Union. So now we're in 1865. So in April 1865, the last significant military obstacle to the Union winning was the survival of Lee's army and forces that continued fighting under him. Grant and Lee face off in the spring of 1865 in the last major fighting of the Civil War. So since Gettysburg, Sherman has been marching across the South, destroying everything in his path. After Vicksburg, Grant gets sent up north to Virginia, and it's a slow-moving kind of wrecking crew going through Virginia, fighting Lee, who is vastly outnumbered. Yes, this is our boss fight. We have Mario versus Wario. I don't think Lee fits the role of a Bowser. He's more of a Wario. So on April 9th, 1865, it's the last kind of, no, I wouldn't say the last battle, but it's the last engagement that Lee's army fights in. It's the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse. Lee's depleted army of only 28,000 soldiers tried and failed to escape Grant's massive army of 150,000, so 5 times the strength, which had been chasing him across Virginia in 1865. So, remember, Confederacy, they're finally running out of steam at this point. Their population, they simply don't have enough people to keep fighting this war. And Lee's army is only 28,000 people. Grant's got 150,000, and he's got many more on the way if they're needed. So April 9th, 1865, Lee agrees to surrender to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. And here is the historic meeting, April 9th, 1865. Robert E. Lee surrenders to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, pretty much ending the major fighting of the Civil War. There's still some fighting going on across, but this is pretty much the end. Lee is the only one who really had a chance of doing anything, and once he surrenders, that meant the war was over. And Grant was actually very gracious in winning. He made sure to send lots of food to Lee's soldiers afterwards because they were starving. The South had run out a lot of the food. And he also allowed them to keep their horses because a lot of the Confederates, they brought their personal property with them. They didn't get horses from the army. They brought their own horses. So I believe it was also Grant who said after it that he didn't want his soldiers kind of gloating or bragging afterward because he said, look, these people are our countrymen again. We need to kind of treat them with respect because we need to get past a lot of the acrimony and hate that has been spread over the past 4 years. And that is... Wait, nope. Continuing. And then I have 2 memes that really fit the bill quite well. So Ulysses S. Grant accepts Confederate surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. They had us in the first half, not gonna lie. Yeah, that's really the story of the Civil War. 1861, 1862, and into 1863, it looks like the South is winning. But then in the second half, the Union gets its act together. It's better resources, and they're able to actually win. And then here we have from X-Men First Class. I love this meme. I prefer the real Confederate flag, and it's not that one. And then you have, okay, well, that's the real one. Well, I said the real Confederate flag. And then, no, perfection. So if you don't know what this means, generally in war, waving a white flag or even a white rag means surrender. So General Robert E. Lee surrenders in April. President Jefferson Davis, he runs away at first, but he's captured in May. And the entire Confederacy collapses and officially surrenders by the end of the spring in 1865. So you see, 2 weeks after Lee surrenders, that whole section goes 4 weeks after, then 7 weeks. So it's really Lee, his surrender is the domino that sets all this in motion. And then we have the Civil War. Total Union victory. But the total losses are incredibly high. Higher than any other American war at that point, and higher than any American war ever. So the Union lost more people than the South. And remember, there's 2 reasons for that. One, the South did have more capable generals like Lee, who oftentimes were outnumbered, but they still ended up killing more Union soldiers in their battles than the Union killed them. But also the fact that the Union had to go and march through the South. Back then, being a defender was easier than being an attacker. You lost more people attacking than defending. But still, it's catastrophic. This is over 1 million people killed or wounded in the Civil War. And like I said at the beginning, that is nearly as much as the amount of people lost in every American war combined. World War I, World War II, Revolutionary War, Vietnam, everything added together, the Civil War is basically equal to. And then the North wins. So we have the newspaper headlines, surrender of General Lee. Lots of celebration. But I should warn you, if you are interested in stories with happy endings, that story is streaming elsewhere. The Civil War does not really have a happy ending. And one of the reasons for that is, on the night of April 14th, this is 5 days after Lee surrendered, President Lincoln and his wife, they go to a play. I forget the name of the play, but it's in Ford's Theater. And in the middle of the play, Lincoln is shot in the head by an assassin who supported the South. So really any celebration is short-lived with a national tragedy. So Abraham Lincoln, rest in peace, 1809 to 1865. And this story is to be continued. Tomorrow we'll talk about the Lincoln assassination, the reactions to it, and what happened after. Until then, get working on the assignment. Hope you found this slideshow somewhat entertaining when I added my animations and all that. But I'll see you later at the Google Meet. This will be Mr. LEPRE signing off from LEPRE Radio.